Hello and welcome to Sexual Health. I'm your host, Crisalda Dudumache. Did you know that the position of the sun, stars, moon, and planets at the time of a person's birth can shape one's personality, affect their romantic relationships, and predict their economic fortunes, amongst other divinations? This is according to astrology. On today's episode, we look at astrology readings and how they affect your relationships. Joining me in studio to speak more about astrology readings and how they affect relationships is Warren Calvey, who is from Celestial Waters, and he is a traditional astrologer. Hello, Warren. Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you, Crisalda. Thank you for having me on your show.
Let's perhaps define what astrology reading means.
Okay, I think a good point of departure is just to recite a 19th century philosopher, Gurdjieff. And what Gurdjieff said is that every cosmos is a living being. It breathes, it moves, it thinks, it feels, it is born, and it dies. Now, at the moment of our first breath, we embody a cosmos inside at that exact point. That's why time is so important, because it's like somebody takes a snapshot, the shutter comes down, and there's a picture of the ambience in the cosmos at the moment that a living being takes its first breath and it's crucified into matter on the cross of the four elements. Now, at that moment, there is an angular relationship between the position on Earth and the time and all the planets in the cosmos. Now, astrology, if you want to try and understand what astrology really is, we've got to go to the root of the word. Now, astrology is based on two Greek words, astron, meaning star, and logos, or logi, meaning word or story. So ultimately, it is a story of the stars. And we each have a story, a cosmic story that is very readable, and it's imprinted on the position of the planetary bodies in the heavens at that moment, that very moment that we take our first breath. The ambience is set. And as an astrologer, we read the story of the stars and we can see what the promises of the life is, what the nature, what the quality, what kind of events are going to happen. This happens because on the eastern horizon at the moment of birth, we know that the sun rises in the east. It doesn't matter what time of day, where the sun is, but there's a particular constellation of stars that are rising right on the angle on the eastern horizon. And the light from those stars imbue the individual with their character, their skill, their wit, and their talent. Now, there are 12 houses and there are also 12 signs. Now, the astrology that I practice is traditional astrology. To get to the truth of anything, you always have to go to the roots. So it's common practice in traditional astrology to understand the roots of as many words as you can. Now, traditional comes from the word traditio in Latin, which means to be handed down, to be delivered. Now, traditional astrology is nothing new. There is nothing new under the sun. It has been handed down through the ages, before time immemorial.
When you say handed down, do you study or perhaps it's passed on from one generation to another?
It is certainly passed on from one generation of philosophers to another. Our first, we get an understanding of where this information comes from when we look to our ancient astrologers, philosophers. We have the likes of Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates. Pythagoras, in fact, said that God built the universe on number. The Zohar, which is the Jewish or Judaic biblical text, says that God built the universe on number and letter. So once you start familiarizing yourself with the works of these philosophers, it becomes very clear, and this is going back 500 years before Christ. In those times, you know, today, modern astrology, that's why there's a difference between modern and traditional. Traditional astrology was seen as the first science. It has been documented that mathematics is based on astrology, astronomy comes out of astrology, alchemy comes out of astrology.
But then why is there so much tabooness around astrology if it's been known as the first science?
Well, I think that's possibly a power struggle between different religions, because you've got to remember that before Christianity actually, astrology defines the ages that come in. There's every 2,160 years, there's an age that transfers over. And we moved into the age of Pisces around the birth of Christ. Now, everyone knows that there is a symbol of the fish that's on that people have as a symbol of Christianity. It's because it's actually, and Christ said in his 4 Gospels that I will make you fishers of men.
Yes.
There is, the more you read the Bible and study the Bible with an astrological background, the more you realize that the Bible is actually, it's a book about the sun. In Greek, Holy Bible is translated Helios Biblia, which means sun book.
Let's take a break. When we come back, let's talk about how it then affects people's day-to-day lives. I know people buy their newspapers, their magazines. The first point is where my star signs are. And we'll talk about that when we come back. It's time for an ad break, and we'll further this conversation when we return. In the meantime, do join our Facebook page at DSTV 190 is where you find us. And on Twitter, we are at 190ad. Just stay with us. Some people have failed relationships and never understood what went wrong. Let us attempt to answer some of those questions that you've had and never really got the answers. Warren is still with me in studio. Now, Warren, let's talk about, oftentimes you find a person saying, I'm a Virgo and my partner is an Aries. Are we compatible? Yes. How does astrology link to relationships?
Okay, we've got to remember that sort of synastry and compatibility that we see say in magazines and newspapers, that's a very superficial rendition of what's really...
Come on now, you're bursting our bubbles. Some people religiously follow them.
Yes, well, that's, I mean, there is general information there that will resonate with the individual if they have a sun sign in Capricorn or a sun sign in Aries, depending on where it is. But in terms of specific sun sign astrology is only, and it is referred to as pop astrology because it's only referring to one aspect, and that's also why astrology can get a bad name because, oh well, that applies to everyone. Now you've got to remember that we are actually looking at 10 planets, not just one. And the sun sign astrology in the magazines just shows where your sun is and gives you general information. Now, as a traditional astrologer, I only work with 7 planets. The reason being is that 7 is the manifold number of creation, and there are 7 visible planets to the naked eye. Now, they are the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. It's interesting that the sun in Latin is soul. The soul, our soul comes, it's connected to the sun.
Wow.
So now what we are at the moment of your first breath, all the planets are in a very unique and only happens once in an eternity that they are in that particular configuration, making aspects to each other. So what is very important in relationships is the constellation of stars that is rising on the eastern horizon when you are born is you, and on the western horizon, the constellation of stars that are setting is your partner. And this dynamic, it's like you and I face my partner. And that's when you read the chart, you can see the individual and you can see them facing the partner. Now, in astrology, we have planets that bring goods, plenty, fortune, and we have planets that their function is to break things down, to prepare for the new. And that's why our lives are transitory, although we are eternal beings, which you don't have to believe. You come to know the more you discover astrology. You truly come to know that the kingdom of heaven truly is within us. And anyway, now, and some people wonder, oh, well, you know, that's my friend has been married, they've been happily married for
why can't
10
I
years.
get the same
What's
thing?
wrong with me? And then they go into this, this self depreciating, hurting self, you know, where they blame themselves.
Is it possible that in connecting to these planets, you are not meant to have a compatible partner? You are here to be light in other areas of people's lives as opposed to get married or have children?
In many ways, it does work like that because some people are more blessed in the area of relationships because it's all about what is on that sign of stars, the constellation on the seventh house cusp, which is on the western horizon. If you have the benefic planets that bring ease and good fortune, then you will have a relationship that is full of ease and love and good fortune and support and happiness. You'll be one of those people that everyone envies. And then you have some people have malefics, and the malefics are the planet Saturn and the planet Mars. And over the thousands of charts I do, whenever there are malefics somehow making any aspects to the seventh house, it is not maybe. It's a guarantee if the birth time is right. Remember, the birth time is essential. 15 minutes out and a lot changes. But within 15 minutes, the information is very accurate. Then there generally, 100% of the time, there will be issues that come up in the relationship because the nature, it's all about, planets have a being. And the being, Mars, is the god of war, as you all know. So it's
you're
being
this individual who's just always looking for war.
Correct. And
but when you understand what connections, what energies you connected to, then you're able to manage it and control it.
That is correct, because then you become more aware of your own constellation, and especially with my wife and I, I'm very aware of her constellation, she's very aware of my constellation, and we also are tracking the planets every single day, so we know when Mars, the god of war, is coming to make a difficult angle. So like, I'll say, honey, next week there's going to be quite a tension between us because the nature of Mars is sharp, hot, dry, and cutting. So
that means you go softer because you understand that she's going to be the queen.
Correct. And vice versa as well. She can see, okay, well, we expected this energy, okay, and then, you know, it might flare up, and then we're like, whoa, 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 we know that Mars is making a strong angle, and we feel it come in, and then you start working with this planetary energy.
But as an astrologist, it's easier, Warren, for you to talk like this and interpret this. People break up in relationships because they don't understand their connections, you know, to some of these signs. How do we then break it down to a layperson's terms that as an individual, I'm connected to what is presented to me?
Okay, sorry, how do we break
as
down?
in, how do we simplify the understanding that, because surely you're not going to expect Crisalda to be constantly looking for where's the plateau, where's the sun facing.
No, I think this is how we do it. What we do is, if you find that you find yourself in a challenging relationship, or you find that it's been a historical pattern. Now, a lot of people will blame themselves. Now, that is where that is completely, I believe it's inaccurate and it's misdirected, because then you go to see a competent astrologer, and the astrologer can explain to you the qualities and the kinds of partners that you attract. Now, if it's you can have very poor configurations, you can have which will always cause difficulty, and some people can just never hold relationship together. There's a very good reason. They've got an exact Mars, very tight Saturn square, two malefics whenever they go around the chart, because you move around your horoscope in a spiral. And you keep going around, and that's why there's the modern term that history keeps repeating itself. Our lives keep repeating. Correct, and the sins of the father are passed down for 7 generations. This is all very much tied into planetary cycles. Even the days of our week are named after the planets. Monday, Moon Day; Saturday, Saturn's Day; Sunday, Sunday. So, and the other days are named after the planets through different languages. So if you understand French, you know Mercury's day is Mercredi's day, Jupiter's day is Thor, Thursday, Venus's day is Freya, Friday. You Freya when Venus's day comes around, Freya's day. So all the 7 planets, there's 7 days of the week, there are 7 colors, there are 7 sounds, there are 7 chakras, each ruled by a planet. There are 7 oceans, 7 continents. This number 7 is a universal number of manifold creation, and it's throughout our lives.
When we come back, let's have a perfect example or a clear example of what you've been talking about.
Wonderful.
We'll have a guinea pig.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Beautiful looking one. Now let's go for an ad break. When we come back, we'll do an actual reading right here in studio, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back. We're still talking about astrology readings and relationships, and now we are about to just have an actual live reading. Joining us in studio is Refilwe Matobu, who is one of our colleagues, and Warren is also still with us. Let's do this. So what information did you need?
Okay, so I've got Refilwe's date of birth, her time of birth, and this is a fairly accurate time. You're pretty certain of that time, correct?
That's what my mom said.
And the place of birth.
Are you nervous?
Very.
Why?
Because I'm going through stuff. Like, this has been a very difficult year for myself personally. So I'm uncertain about things.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Warren, these would be the reasons why people then consult.
Yes.
Because there comes a time when there's just so much baggage, so much is happening in your life that you want clarity. It's not, because I can hear a person saying, but this is anti-God.
It's the language of God.
It's the language of God. Is that comforting?
Yes, yes.
Because God would never want to harm you.
Never, ever.
Okay, well, should I begin?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, what we do, like I was discussing, is that there are 12 areas of life. The first area that we focus on is the constellation of stars that was rising on the eastern horizon, the doorway of the sun. Now, the constellation rising for you, Refilwe, is the sign of Gemini. So, although you are a Cancer sun, and also in the traditional system, which makes complete scientific sense, the sun rules the masculine forces of this universe, the moon rules the feminine. So, the sun in a man's horoscope you'd look to to see characteristics and traits of the man, and you focus more on the moon of a woman because she is the female incarnation of the God force. So the moon is also very telling. But the first thing we do, besides the sun and the moon, is to look to that constellation that was rising, because that's going to define the personality, that's going to define the skill, the wit, and the talent.
And what did you discover about that?
Okay, so Refilwe's Gemini rising, which means that she's very active, very talkative, likes to share information.
Gosh, I can hear
she's
her
like the
colleagues say
butterfly of the zodiac, running around from one little place to another, always making a joke. She's actually a very gifted and talented woman. She's now, it's number one, the planet Mercury is in its joy in the first house. And that's where her planet is. So it means it's extra fortified, okay? And that means that she'd be a very good writer, communicator, would be passionate about. The sign of Gemini is an air sign. An air sign rules the airwaves. The airs is our ideas and thinking. So very much always working with ideas and thinking and being very passionate about that. If somebody had to tell you that you couldn't speak or you couldn't communicate, what would that do to you?
I'd suffocate.
You would suffocate.
How accurate is this?
It's very